Hello everyone, and this is the Halloween special for Shaf-Tober. Enjoy! Number 1. Please take just one. I was 13 years old when I stopped trick-or-treating. The other kids weren't so eager to give up free candy yet. But something happened that year. Something awful. My friends Owen, Drew and I were out trekking for candy when we came to a house that had a big bowl of it sitting on the porch. A sign above it read, "Please, take just one." We joked about swiping it all, but Owen and Drew only took a few each, enough to make them feel like bad kids. I'd always been afraid to take more than one, because I was intimidated by authority. Sure, it was just a sign, and it usually meant that the owner wasn't home, but I was a timid kid who always did what she was told. Owen and Drew explained how that house did the same thing every year, and that people rarely saw the guy who lived there. They dared me to do what they were too chicken to do, so I decided to see what it would feel like to do something naughty. We looked around to make sure no one was watching, and I poured the contents of the bowl into my bag. The three of us ran down the street laughing and shoving at each other. Part of me expected someone to chase after us in hindsight. I was right to be concerned. At Owen's house, we dumped out and sorted all of our yummy treasures. I tried to offer him and Drew some of the contraband candy, but they refused. I remember Owen saying, "That's all you," and Drew shouting, "I don't want your tainted treats." Granted, they weren't entirely serious, but I was annoyed that they weren't sharing in the responsibility enough to go home instead of staying over. That night, I was torn from a sugar-fueled dream by a hand over my mouth and a knife to my neck. The skin was rough and the blade was ice cold. It was just slightly pressing into my skin, ready to slit my throat at a moment's notice. My body went stiff. I wanted to scream, but then a gruff voice whispered, "Don't make a sound." At first, I didn't realize what was happening. Were we being burglarized? Then, I got my answer. "Can't you read, little girl? The sign said just one. Just one." I'll never forget those words and the sickening smell of his breath. He went on to explain how every year he would catch kids taking 2 or 3 pieces of candy, which always infuriated him. It wasn't until I took the entire bowl that he finally snapped. Why did I do something so stupid? I was terrified and humiliated at the same time. "You like candy, huh?" he asked me, so I shook my head as much as I could, despite his hand pressing against my face. He then removed it, still holding the knife to my neck, and proceeded to shove the unwrapped candy into my mouth. I tried not to inhale, but I couldn't help it. I could feel things pushing against the back of my throat as I whimpered and drawled. I started to gag, but he put his hand back over my mouth so I wouldn't cough anything up. I truly believed I was going to die, and I feared for my friends as well. My short life flashed quickly before my eyes. All I could think in that moment was, how could an adult hate children this much? Everything I presumed about them was suddenly a lie. They weren't infallible, and their authority wasn't always law. Fine, so I took all this guy's candy. Did I really deserve to die? As I contemplated this for the first time, expecting to suffocate to death, my father rushed into the room, grabbed my metal desk chair, and beat the living daylights out of this guy. I never loved my dad so much as I did that night. I'm an adult now, and I live alone in a nice house on a quiet street with lots of kids. Every Halloween, I leave a basket on my front stoop full of candy with a sign that reads, "Take as many as you want." Number 2. A normal Halloween night. Before I start, I will tell you some backstory. Me and my friends were out every Halloween night when I was young. We collected candy and had a good time, like every other kid. But I'm 11 now, and I've stopped collecting candy on Halloween. Let me tell you why. When I was 10 years old, me and my friends were getting dressed up. We had heard that there was a serial killer on the loose, but we didn't care. We couldn't let this night go to waste. We all had the normal goofy Halloween costumes. When we went to the first door, an old woman opened up. She looked in horror as her eyes widened. She began hyperventilating as she said, Good costume." We were confused, as even we knew our Halloween costumes were bad. She gave us some candy, and we left. Even then I should have known something was up, but I couldn't let this night go to waste. We went towards the next house, opening the door. A middle-aged man saw us, and his jaw widened. "Goodness, don't scare me like that," he said. We looked at each other as one of my friends said, "What do you mean?" It's just a very good costume," he said, repeating it, whispering to himself, "nothing more." He gave us a lot of candy. We were happy, but somehow I couldn't shake the feeling of dread off of me. Weird. We went towards the house at the end of the street, where a crazy woman lived. We were scared as we approached the door, but we gave in when we remembered how much candy she had. "Hello," she said. My heart was pounding. "Trick or treat," we shouted. She only stared. It was almost as if somebody was breathing on my neck. "Good costume," she said. "So, how much this time, my little children?" We looked at each other because we didn't know what to say. "A lot," I said with hesitation. "Do you really think you deserve that?" "No," one of my friends said. "I'm joking," she said. "That's the best costume I've ever seen. Have a candy." I couldn't hold it anymore, so I asked, "Whose costume?" And she replied with, "The guy in the serial killer costume behind you." Number 3. My haunted house. I had what many people would call a warped childhood. Many children are raised on nursery rhymes, fairy tales, and Dr. Seuss. And while my childhood did have these memories, my mother included another genre in mine and my sister's upbringing. Horror. I cannot count the number of times when my sister and I would read some of Stephen King's short stories for bedtime, rather than a more common children's story. Popsy was always my favourite. I grew up watching the classic horror movies and being told ghost stories. Many people, when I would tell them this, asked me if I had a lot of nightmares as a child as a result. But the truth is quite the opposite. I was not afraid of boogeymen or ghosts. To me, ghosts and goblins were simply fictional creatures that are only in books, movies, and in stories told around a campfire. The horror genre was simply a part of my life. I loved the feeling of being scared. So, naturally, Halloween was my favourite time of the year. I remember one Halloween, many years ago. I was young, but not so young that I don't have first-hand memories of the event. There was a Halloween attraction that was running just down the street from our house. It had been going on every Halloween for a few years, but my parents had never let my sister and I go before. And then, one year we were finally given permission to go to this haunted attraction. The attraction was built into an old abandoned manor house, just the sort of place where you would expect a Halloween attraction to be built. I remember being very excited as I waited to get into the house, because a lot of the people that were coming out were raving about how scary it was, and I was highly anticipating having my own time inside. Like most Halloween attractions, they let people inside the house in small groups. Because my sister and I were only children, the attendants at the door made sure that we were put in the same group as our parents. Finally, we stepped inside. Inside, it could have been any haunted house in America in the 90s, full of fake fog and grease-painted actors. I wasn't overly scared, because my mother always reminded me that the actors are not allowed to touch you. But I jumped and screamed along with everyone else when a monster jumped out of the hidden nooks and crannies of the old manor house. Eventually, we made our way down into the basement, which had been changed into a stereotypical mad doctor setting, common in a lot of haunted houses. Needless to say, there was a lot of fake blood everywhere, but I'll never forget the basement, because something seemed just a little out of place. Sometimes, even the most normal things can become diabolical if you alter the perspective. It's something you see in a few modern ghost hunting shows in B-shots. There was nothing that immediately jumped out as being evil. There was certainly nothing like The Exorcist happening to tip me off that something was wrong. It was a simple sight, but that made it much more unnerving because it stood out against the overt horror backdrop of the decorated room. In the midst of the bloody carnage of the Mad Doctor's operating room, I remember that an old woman was sitting in the far corner of the room. She looked to be in her 80s, had thinning grey hair, and was very thin. I would be lying to myself if I said that she didn't scare me more than the rest of the attractions combined. At the time, I didn't have much understanding of the effects the different physical ailments can have on a person. But looking back now, I would say that she was the victim of a bad stroke. Sometimes, a stroke will leave the person with one side of his or her face paralysed, and that is exactly what had happened to her. One side of her face was drooping, and saliva was leaking from the corners of her drooped mouth. She was talking, yelling at us as we passed by. Her words were badly slurred because of her paralysed face, but I could make out what she was yelling. Stop! "Get out," over and over again. Even passing through the basement and going out the other side, I could still hear her screaming in that awful slurred way up the stairs. I was extremely disturbed by the sight of the old woman, but as I got away from her, I began to feel better. She was obviously an actor who was working for the attraction. Most of the attraction worked on jump scares, and she was obviously there to cater more to psychological horror. Well, in any case, it worked, and it certainly worked on me. We emerged out into the night once again, and I got an instant sense of relief that makes horror so addicting. That "we have survived" moment. My sister instantly began to talk about which part was her favourite. An actor who jumped out at her in a werewolf costume had been her favourite. When it came to my turn to share, I could think of nothing besides the old woman I'd seen, and I told my family about how the old woman in the basement had scared me the most. "What woman in the basement, Ashley?" my mother asked. Shocked, I began to describe as well as I could what I'd seen. When I had finished, my mother said that she hadn't seen a woman fitting that description down in the basement. The rest of my family agreed with her. I put the incident out of my mind. Like I said, I didn't believe in ghosts, and I didn't believe that they were real. I tried to rationalize why they had missed the old woman and her screams. Each attempt to do this was more pathetic than the last, but I knew that ghosts couldn't be real. The next year, I was eager to step foot in the old manor again, but I was horrified to discover that the old haunted attraction had been shut down and would not be opening again. Since I lived so close to the haunt, a few people in my neighbourhood had taken up jobs there, and I asked them about why it had closed. A few people that would talk to me told me that the old manor was really haunted, with real ghosts, and that too many people were refusing to work there again because of the paranormal activity going on there. Their stories ranged from objects moving on their own, to apparitions, and even to physical attacks against the living that entered certain parts of the house. I laughed it off. People were just letting the atmosphere of the Halloween haunt mess with them. It was probably just a couple of pranksters messing with the workers. But no matter how much I tried to explain to the workers about how it could be a couple of jokers messing around, they kept insisting that it was impossible for it to have been any human activity. But even as I tried to convince them, I couldn't help but remember the old woman that I had seen in the basement, and that no one else had seen her. I was kind of nervous about the whole thing, and I wanted more information about the house. These days, you can look up anything on the internet and have an answer in seconds. But the 90s were not like that. Few people had internet at the time, and my family was one that did not have internet access. So I went to the next best thing. My mother. I asked her about the old manor house. At first, she was reluctant to tell me, which unnerved me more than anything, because she had never shied away from telling us things of that nature before. Finally, she told me what she knew. The manor started out as a private residence, built in the 1920s, but the original owner lost the house in foreclosure. After that, it became a sanitarium, which is something like a small hospital. Just by virtue of being a hospital in an area where it was the only hospital around at that time. a lot of people passed away within the walls. In fact, there are some reports that say that there was at least one death a day within those walls during this time. But that was not even the part that my mother was reluctant to tell me. She told me that afterwards, it was turned into a nursing facility, and they would have taken care of sick older people, just like the old woman I had seen during my walkthrough. But the records of abuse that came out of that place is numerous. Many ex-employees confessed that they quit soon after being hired because of the vast amount of malpractice that had happened there. My mother remembered all of this because it was in the newspapers when it was going on, and it was a huge deal in the community. It made me feel a little sick to think about how those people, those human beings, were treated in that horrible place. And that's not all. Local legend has long said that the building was haunted by the tortured souls of the people who died under the horrible conditions there. The man who built the Halloween attraction there knew of the history and the legend surrounding the place, and built the attraction with the sole purpose of playing off those stories. It was then that I knew that I had seen the ghost of a woman who had died in the building. She just wanted to spend her afterlife in peace. But instead, every year she and her fellow ghosts were interrupted by the living, storming through their place in the thousands, turning their situation into a joke. And for the first time ever, I began to treat ghosts and spirits not as fictional creatures only meant to frighten and scare, but as a real, physical manifestation of a force that humans are not capable of understanding yet. The house, to this day, continues to be a hotspot for paranormal activity. The owner lets in a local paranormal group at least once a week, every Friday night, to do an investigation. Several ghost-themed television shows have filmed at the location. One show brought in a psychic medium who claims that the years the house spent as a Halloween attraction has forever scarred the house and the spirits who reside there. One thing is for sure, I am now a lot more careful about checking the history of any Halloween haunt I go to. Ghosts are everywhere, of course, but I'll never go to a place with such a sad history attached to it. And I haven't been able to get scared inside a Halloween attraction since. I don't scream, jump, or run away as the actors jump out at me. Nearly all of my friends have commented on my bravery in the face of these Halloween attractions. But I'm not brave, not really. It's just a lack of fear, because it's hard to get scared by actors in makeup when you've been inside the real thing. Number 4. A Halloween to remember. My friend and I decided to go trick-or-treating this year. We were teenagers that wanted some candy and to toilet paper houses. We lived in a massive neighborhood, so there was a lot to go around. After 2 hours of going around the streets, egging and toilet papering houses, and the very lucky escape from the police, we were ready to end the night. We all stopped at a dark street. "Should we go?" one of my friends asked. "Okay, one more street," another friend replied. I stared down the dark street, unable to see the end. There was something odd about this street, like it didn't belong. The houses were completely different from the ones in the neighborhood. The houses looked abandoned, and there were no lights either in the street or the houses. "I've got a bad feeling about this, guys," I said. "Don't be a chicken. We're just gonna egg some houses and leave. If they do call the police, we'll sneak out of here. This place is pitch black," my friend replied. We walked down the cold black street, joking around and telling ghost stories, as I couldn't help feeling watched. Houses looked very different and didn't look stable. I knew something was up. I just knew it. The light from the other street began to become dimmer and dimmer. "Okay, here." We took a bag full of eggs and toilet paper. We were cursing and having fun. I almost forgot to be worried. Crack! A loud noise echoed in the street. "What was that?" I asked. "Everybody, hide, now," my friend yelled. I saw all my friends scramble around the block. I hid behind a rusty trash can, looking over the edge. I couldn't see anything because it was so dark. I could only see a blue outline of the houses. I took out my phone for some light. No signal at all on my cell phone. Didn't they build over a dozen cell phone towers in this area? I shined my light towards the street. Crack! This time it was even louder. I pulled back and looked over again. All of my friends were there, standing in the middle of the street. "So what do you think that was?" I questioned, walking towards them. They didn't respond. "Hello?"
There's something about your soul I cannot take, but I'll find a way.
They all said at the same time. "What the?" They all charged towards me. I ran and ran. The darkness seemed to continue on forever. I didn't hear them chasing after me, but I didn't stop. I kept looking for a source of light, or just anybody. I slammed my face into a wall. I got up to see a giant skyscraper outlined in blue and a plentiful of them. It was a city without light. I stood there completely shocked. A lot of questions flew into my mind. What just happened? Where am I? Can I get back? These questions flooded my mind. A loud growl roared behind me. I turned around to see wolf-like creatures blended in the darkness. I stood there, looking straight at the creature. I regret my decision after that. I ran as fast as I could. Hearing the creature's paws hitting the concrete, I stopped at an alley. "I think I'm okay," I said to myself. "You're far from okay," a familiar voice said. I turned around to see an army of people standing. I tried to run, but another group blocked the other side of the alley. A tall man stood in front. He was dressed in black and was wearing a hoodie that blocked his face. "What do you want from me?" I yelled. "I want your soul, like I did with all your little friends here. I use this realm to capture as many souls as I want." "You monster!" I yelled back. "You're different. Your soul is special and very hard to get. And what makes it harder is that you're protected. But no soul is strong enough to keep me out. Get ready to become my puppet." Then they closed in on me. I felt like this was the end, and that I was going to be made his puppet, and I couldn't do anything about it. A stereotypical light shone down on me. "Not her again," the tall man said. I woke up in my bed with my bag of candy and leftover eggs from last night. I looked at my digital clock and it read 7 a.m. 11/1/11. I laid there for a while and wondered if it was all a dream. Whatever happened, I'm safe now. I got up to get ready for school and saw a sticky note on my door saying, "I haven't forgotten about you yet." Number 5. Beware the dark figure. Witness a man in his late 20s, all alone in a 2-story house on All Hallows Eve. The trick-or-treaters have long since gone, and now it's time for him to relax with a mug of warm milk and watch a horror film. As he sits in a comfortable chair in his basement in front of a large flat screen, he feels a sense of security from the outside world. But there is one thing at this moment that he must be aware of. Me. My name is not important, and it certainly won't matter to my new friend. According to his ID that I've just discovered, his name is Josh. I'm currently hiding in Josh's bedroom upstairs. What am I doing in this particular house? Just having some fun, of course. Call me the dark figure, for I dress completely in black. I'm just an average girl you've probably seen on the bus heading to work in the big city, when I'm not busy with my 9-to-5 desk job or spending time with my family. I'm sneaking into people's houses for fun and games. There are no rules to the games that I play. I just like to make them up as I go and be creative. I choose my playmates based on one specific thing. Unlock doors. You'd be surprised how many people don't bother to lock their doors anymore. I've crept into many houses where the residents were busy watching a movie. Just like this man, Josh. You should have seen the looks on their faces. Anyways, you'd think on a night like Halloween night that nobody would dare leave their front doors unlocked. What with all the crazies in costumes running wild. Luckily, Josh was thoughtful enough to do just that. Now I will have a happy Halloween. I've brought along a toy for this occasion. My trusty pry bar that I stole years ago from my dad's garage. It's long, blunt, and sharp. It's also kind of a pain to carry around, but it has a rusted, menacing look that freaks people out, which amuses me. Oh, I also have a small bottle of a very toxic green chemical that I stole from a friend who is majoring in chemistry. To be honest, I have no idea what it does, but I'll know soon. Before my game starts, I think I'll help myself to some Halloween candy. I love the Snickers bars and Reese's. They bring me back to my childhood. The sound of the movie from downstairs is shaking the house, but then suddenly, it stops. Perhaps my boots on the floor made too much noise. I should retreat back to the dark bedroom. Sure enough, Josh is making his way up the staircase right now, but he can't notice me if I remain in the shadows. He doesn't see me. I'm standing in the hallway right now, staring back at him, and he has no idea. Now he's going outside with a flashlight to investigate the noises I've been making. Perfect. Time to go to work. I'll wait till Josh is outside searching around. Then I can creep past the open door and proceed down the dark basement, which is illuminated by the TV screen. There is a black and white horror film he has on pause. The DVD case says it's Maniac. How fitting. With no time to waste, I spot the mug of warm milk on a stand next to his comfy recliner. I put several drops of the chemical into the steaming liquid, then retreat into the spare downstairs bedroom at the end of a small hallway. Now I wait and listen. Getting excited, I hear the sound of Josh returning to his home and closing the door, followed by the sound of him descending the staircase. He sits back into his chair and unpauses the movie. Sounds of maniacal laughter fill the room. All I can hear next is the film's dialogue with the classical music playing. Just then, I hear Josh's body thud to the ground, followed by a dragging noise. The chemical has made him too weak to stand, and he's crawling in agony to the nearest bathroom to try and puke it up. Lucky for me, the nearest bathroom is right across from the room I am in. He's getting closer now. Time to strike. I step out of the shadows, and Josh is still crawling on the floor. I raise my pry bar, then impale him right through the head. Blood squirts out and splashes on my black mask. I pull my weapon out of his skull and take it into the bathroom to wash the blood and brain matter off of it. Should I have tortured him some more first? Oh well, there will always be another victim. I take a seat on Josh's recliner and watch the rest of the movie before calling it a night and sneaking out of the back door. I have to get up early tomorrow anyways for a meeting. But someday soon, I, the dark figure, will return. Remember, if you hear a strange noise at your door late at night, just tell yourself it's the wind. That way, I can play with you. Number 6. Halloween 2.0. Hannah pressed the button of her digital recorder. New World Podcast, number 1, October 31st. She shook her head and cleared her throat. Happy Halloween, my new listeners. I started this podcast to let you others know that you can survive. We are here, and you can find us. The calendar says 12 months to the date since the first outbreak of the virus. Seems like forever ago. I didn't understand how big this thing was at the beginning. I'm sure you didn't either. Life imitating art, or our nightmares, right? My parents knew right away we needed to leave. They moved us all to our cabin until things settled down. My little sister whined about leaving, but they said they couldn't have us listening to the gunshots night and day. We escaped just as the barricades went up. Like one of those cop shows, my dad weaved in and around the blockades, and we have the snowball-sized bullet holes in the back of our car to prove how close we came to not leaving. Dead Control has managed the hordes that crop up now and then. DC has a new meaning now, doesn't it? Not to be confused with the old centre of government. But around here, we haven't seen a horde in 2 weeks. And DC has done a darn good job, no matter what the conspiracy theorists say. Hannah covered the kitchen floor in newspaper and placed everything else on top. Halloween seems to have changed its meaning too. One ritual is still popular though. It goes back hundreds of years and the first part still makes my stomach churn. Opening the top and scooping the slimy inside out. It has to be cleaned out well, or it starts to smell quickly. The pile grew on the newspaper. Hannah's dog found it interesting. "Get lost, Jasper, it will make you sick," she continued. After 10 months, we returned home. Home is odd somehow, out of place. Change takes getting used to. My school holds classes as usual, and stores are open for business. I don't know about where you are. If DC spots a pack of wandering dead, our school goes into lockdown until they pass. Or if there's enough time, we're dismissed. Home is safer. Stores roll down their gates and wait it out. We made adjustments. And finally, we feel safe letting our guard down just for a bit to have fun and celebrate, like we used to. Hannah took her Sharpie and drew a design. As you've guessed, I'm talking while I'm carving, so bear with me, listeners. This one's tougher than I expected. I've got to work with what I have, and this one limits my options for creativity. Right now, I'm carving the eyes. I love doing the eyes. They're the most expressive, round and hollow. Now the nose. And the triangle is easy enough. She wiped off the knife and decided what to do with the mouth. The teeth are a cinch bit tedious, and she cut and carved as she recorded. In ancient times, I was told this ritual would keep away the evil spirits. Now, it just keeps away evil. What else has changed? Oh, if someone dies at home, the procedure is to call DC hotline or fill out the request for a pickup form online. They take care of the disposal, and a remembrance service is held at the house. But our neighbour's wife died, and her husband, who shall remain nameless for security reasons, didn't call. We found out because we heard the growling and snarling from his basement window. My dad said he wouldn't call as long as he kept the chains in good order. My neighbour had a pit bull when we were little. Before, my dad said the same thing about the pit bull. You can email me and tell me and other listeners what your procedures are. That's if your infrastructure is up. Hannah notched the top as a vent for the candle. She twisted and twisted the top so that it sat on the bottom like a puzzle piece. Trick-or-treating. Now, that was fun. Free candy. Dressing up as superheroes. It's too dangerous now to go out. Not so much because of the hordes. It's more because of the lone missed strays. People have house parties instead. You're one of the lucky ones to be invited. Social outcasting hasn't gone away. Some things haven't changed. Our family was intact when we returned from the cabin. Many families weren't so fortunate. And now whispers that we had some kind of secret cure or unfair immunity keeps us from being included. We just left before it got to us. No magic there. Hannah rolled up the newspaper and admired her work. I'm done. Not bad, kiddies. I'll post a picture when it's sitting in front of my house. When the candle is inside, it will glow on our porch and remind others of Halloween's new meaning. Hannah clicked the recorder just as her sister Tasha entered the kitchen. Hey, nice. Particularly gruesome this year, Hannah. Hannah smiled and nodded. I have to agree. Tasha struggled with a large orange pumpkin as big as her own head. You're going to give yourself a hernia, Tash. Tasha set it down on the floor and said, How about this time you use a pumpkin? Well everyone, Shaf-Tober has now officially come to an end. I hope you enjoyed this month as much as I did, and there will be more content up very soon. If you liked this video, remember to like the video, and please subscribe if you haven't already. In the comments down below, leave me a comment telling me which one of these stories was your favourite. And also, leave me the name of your favourite horror movie. And, as always, stay sinister.